Hello everyone! We're coming to you live from Katmai National Park at the base of the Alaska Peninsula here in southwest Alaska, and specifically Brooks Falls. The Brooks River is about 1.5 miles long. It goes between Brooks Lake and Naknek Lake, and this waterfall happens to be a gathering place for brown bears, which is what we're looking at right out there. They're feeding on some of the salmon that migrate upriver as they travel to their natal grounds. And we get to bring you this live program with the help of Explore.org. We're really pleased with our partnership with Explore.org so that we can help to bring the sights and the sounds of the Brooks River and get a look at the lives of these brown bears while they're here for a few months before they go off and hibernate for the winter. And today we're going to do something a little bit different. I am joined by Ranger David next to me, but he is not speaking during this program. Instead, he has this fancy little gadget called a parabolic microphone, and he's going to point that device at the bears and see if we can pick up on some sounds, like perhaps the sound of bears eating salmon. We're going to focus in on one bear that looks like it might be making some sounds with some salmon. We'll see if it picks up anything. Displaced right now by an older, larger, and much more dominant male, number 32. He's caught a fish as well from his preferred fishing spot here next to the waterfall. Let's see if we'll pick up any sounds from him eating his fish. The bears struggle for survival. These bears are feeding on salmon until they head into hibernation later on this year, in about 2 months or so. And for the bears, they rely on the salmon to get enough calories so that they can survive through a winter of no food at all. For the salmon, their story of survival is all about getting beyond the obstacles that lie in their path between the ocean, where they grow into adults, and their natal grounds, where they will go and lay the round of the next generation of salmon that will be reared in these fresh waters before heading out to the ocean to spend their time as adults as well. It might be a little bit different today since we're going to be using this parabolic microphone to try to focus in on some of the sounds that otherwise might get drowned out by that really loud waterfall or maybe the sound of gulls. We may not have the opportunity to answer as many viewer questions as we usually do in a play-by-play program like this one. So we're trying it out. It's a new way of doing the play-by-play. Hopefully it works well. Let us know what you think. So in a play-by-play like this, we're going to just take a look at what the bears are up to right now. We'll have the chance to tell you a little bit more about who we're seeing here on the river, what they're doing, and maybe what it means in the bigger picture of things. So as I mentioned, that's bear number 32, nicknamed Chunk, that has brought his latest catch to the upriver end of that island. And returning now just downriver of him is bear number 503, nicknamed Cub Adult. They're both males, but they occupy really different positions within the bear hierarchy. Bear 503 is pretty young. He is 4 years old this year. He's a subadult, so he's no longer under his mother's care. He's an independent bear now, but he is not yet fully mature, so that's why we call him a subadult. Bear number 32, Chunk, he is an adult male. So he's probably reaching his full size. He's a young teenager, maybe about 12 years old or so right now. And this year, he seems to have established himself as the top bear. He is the most dominant bear that we've seen. He doesn't seem to let any other bears displace him. With 32 over there eating his fish, this is the second time now in about the past half hour that I've seen 503 do this. With this space available, he's taking an opportunity to enjoy this preferred fishing spot, maybe until 32 returns and pushes him away. So that's one way that we can sort of keep track of the bear hierarchy here at Brooks Falls. Just by watching how bears react to one another, you can get a sense for maybe who is more dominant than who's yielding space to another bear. And oftentimes, bears are doing this to try to avoid getting into a fight that could be something that might cause them an injury, which might negatively impact their ability to eat enough salmon to survive the winter. Like bear number 32 is preparing to occupy this preferred fishing spot once again. This 503 walked away. It looked like maybe he had a wound near his backside. That might be an indication of an interaction with another bear, the same sort of injured noise at one another to try to prove that they are more dominant. That way the other bear might back off and they can avoid getting into a fight. Just seen another subadult bear come onto the scene here. Just go over next to 503 as he's eating his fish. This subadult looks like bear number 719. That's a young female bear. She is 3 years old this year, and she and bear number 503 were raised as siblings for most of their lives. You may have heard about a bear adoption that took place here on the Brooks River a few years back, and that was when the mother of bear number 719 ended up adopting bear 503, who, as a found bear number 719 and her mother, and that mother bear took 503 into her care, nursed him, appeared to den along with him and her own biological cub, and both of those bears were emancipated from their mother's care last spring. So they survived their first summer and winter as independent bears. They're back again this year, and both of those bears, 503 and 719, we've seen come up to Brooks Falls and try their hand, or I guess try their paws, at the fishing up here, where it can be quite good. We've seen 503 and 719 tolerate one another at pretty close distances. Bears are usually solitary creatures, so they tend to want to be on their own. And they're pretty selfish creatures because if they don't get enough food to survive the winter, then they simply won't make it back again the next year. And sometimes it's hard to wrap our human brains around a concept like that. But ultimately, if a bear wants to make it to the next year, they might have to act selfishly. But there are some times where we will see bears tolerate one another or even appear to share fish, which is something that we see sometimes between 503 and 719. A couple days ago, I saw her successfully catch a fish from that position on the lip. It takes a bit of skill for bears to learn how to catch fish as they jump up the waterfall. And it looks like most of the salmon that we're seeing jump right now are silver salmon or coho salmon. The salmon that we see the most of in the Bricks River are sockeye or red salmon. And we can still see them in the water. They have bright red bodies and green heads, but for the most part, they are done migrating upriver to their spawning grounds. This is the time that we will see the silver salmon jump the waterfall. As they turn into their spawning colors, they'll have a darker back and head, and their sides tend to be reddish or maroon. So that can be one way to tell what kind of salmon you're seeing as it's jumping out of the water. And those are some of the salmon that I've seen this particular female bear successfully catch from her position there on the top of the lip. We did get a question from a viewer about why female bears might have fewer scars than males. And they noted that bears like number 128, Grazer, she gets into fights, especially as she is defending her cubs. She will aggressively approach other bears, including larger male bears. And we've seen them use their teeth on one another, and this is something that female bears will do, but they still don't necessarily get into as many fights as male bears. All right, that looked like bear number 151, a younger adult male, 10 years old, that's here at the base of the falls, going up near where the old fish ladder is. And another look at bear dominance and hierarchical positions. You can see who yields to whom. That younger female bear is yielding her space to 151, who she probably recognizes is a larger bear, potentially capable of harming her, so she would rather avoid that fight by getting out of the way. The gull that she chased off of the rock might also wisely be choosing to get out of the way of the bear, which is larger than it, and hoping to avoid injury as well. He is a bear that we've seen play extensively with other bears, including bear number 503. Earlier today, they were playing on the other side, on the far side of the river. It sort of mimics fighting, so it might be a way that bears are practicing or getting stronger so that they might be more likely to win dominance interactions. There are some times, though, where if you're feeling confused about whether you're looking at play fighting or real fighting, one of the ways to tell is if the bears are making sounds. And if you have a sweet parabolic microphone, maybe you'll be able to tell if they are making sounds. Usually bears who are truly fighting might include growls or roars with their physical fighting. If bears are play fighting, though, they are typically silent. So that can be one way to tell the difference. And we've got to look now at the far side of Brooks Falls, where we have a few more adult males that are fishing for salmon over there. On the far right, we are looking at some people's favorite bear. It's bear number 480, nicknamed Otis. He was absent from the Brooks River for a little while. We don't know where he went. We don't have a way of tracking the bears along the Brooks River, but we are lucky enough to get to spend time seeing these bears relatively close day after day and year after year. And with that opportunity, we have a bear monitor who will identify individual bears, and if they're seen 3 times in monitoring sessions, then they receive an identifying number. And that's how we keep track of these a few days ago, so we know that he's back, and we know that he is once again occupying his preferred fishing spot, and that's over there on the far side. He is very good about conserving energy as he fishes for salmon. He might appear to be very, very still for a very long time. And apparently, whenever he feels the moment is right, that is when he will pounce and go after a salmon. You can tell from his size that he's quite successful at his fishing strategy. The other 2 male bears that are back there, we've got the one in the middle, which appears to be bear number 474. That is another adult male that we recognize on the river. He was first identified as an adult bear in 2014. So maybe he did not use the Brooks River as a younger bear. Bears are certainly capable of adapting to different situations, of learning where fishing might be particularly good. So maybe bear number 474 grew up somewhere else, but happened upon the Brooks River, found that the fishing was good enough that it was worth sticking around. The other male bear there that's on the left would appear to be bear number 68. And there's been some discussion about the identification of that particular bear. And it's not always an easy game, trying to keep track of which bear is which. The bear monitors certainly have their work cut out for them. Partly because bears will change their appearance, and if they spend perhaps the month of August away from the Brooks River and return in September to feed on salmon once again, then they usually return as fatter and darker, and their shape can change enough that it almost seems that their face shape itself might change. And their new coat, which they're growing in, might cover up diagnostic scars, things that we otherwise might be able to use to identify a particular individual. One of the reasons why we see these bears return to Brooks Falls or to the Brooks River in September is because the sockeye salmon that went upriver in July to go to their spawning grounds have now spawned out, and their bodies are starting to wash back downriver, creating sort of a second feast, another plentiful period of salmon in the river. Right now, we also have a fairly strong run of silver salmon that are going up, and that's one reason why we're seeing more bears next to Brooks Falls here in September than we typically do. At this time of year, as those sockeye salmon are washing downriver, they tend to collect in the lower river. So areas farther downstream, that tends to be where we see more bears. All right, so it looks like we have a new bear that has entered the river. This looks like bear number 747, and as you watch the other bears react to his presence, that should give you a clue about where 747 is in the dominance hierarchy. You may have also noticed that 747 is not a small bear. He's probably the largest bear that we recognize on the Brooks River, and I'm especially interested to see how he and bear number 32 interact. As you can tell, 32 is also not a small bear at this point in the year. Bears like number 32 and all the other brown bears that come to the Brooks River, like I mentioned before, they're trying to gain as much weight as they can so that they can survive a winter of hibernation, a period of time where they will eat nothing. Instead, they will spend a few months in a den somewhere in Katmai National Park. That's another part of the mystery of what these bears do when we don't see them. We don't necessarily know exactly where they go to den. But we do know that during hibernation, bears will lose about a third of their body weight. They're going to lose about a third of that weight while they're hibernating. And when they come out of hibernation in the springtime, they'll be ready to start eating once again to try to pack on the pounds and survive yet another year. At this time of year, as we get into fall, bears are entering a period that's called hyperphagia. And that's a time where they're basically they're eating a lot of food, and it seems that they won't stop eating. And hyperphagia, during that, bears suppress the production of leptin, and that is something that helps essentially let the body know that it's feeling full. So by suppressing the production of leptin, they're sort of losing their ability to recognize that their stomach is full and they're ready to stop eating. This is an excellent way to help a bear survive the winter, since after you get uncomfortably full, you just push on and keep on eating. And if you're not spending your time eating, you may spend your time playing, which it looks like a couple of our bears are starting to do here. Once again, two of our younger male bears, 151 Walker on the left, he's 10 years old, 503 Cub Adult on the right, who is 4. We'll listen in as David acts as a magician's assistant to see if the parabolic microphone can pick up any sounds over there. really fighting, then we might hear some growls or roars. In essence, the life of a male bear up here at Brooks Falls, it's one that is rife with competition. All these male bears are competing with one another for fishing spots. They compete for mates in springtime, and they continue to compete for space when they are here in the fall. And sometimes they will simply tolerate one another's presence. As 151 and 503 continue to grow, they may continue to play even as they are both adults. We have seen full-grown adult males play with one another since we practice maintaining at least 50 yards away from these wild mammals. If 151 and 503 do continue to play, it'll be interesting to see kind of how their relative sizes develop, since they both look roughly the same size. But as I mentioned before, 151 is 10 years old and 503 is 4 years old. And as we saw, 503 went into the jacuzzi, this preferred fishing spot. It seems like he has been successful fishing there before. So if this is his size at 4 years old, it'll be interesting to see how large he gets. We've got some fishing action happening elsewhere on the lip of the falls. So this is once again the young female bear that was up there earlier. As bears learn different fishing skills, they may choose to stay in a particular fishing spot. For example, if this bear becomes particularly adept at catching fish on the lip, that might become her preferred spot, and as she grows, she might continue to occupy that space, or just sit right down. Why not? It can get pretty tiring standing up there with all that water rushing down around you. There are some other female bears and a couple of male bears that will also fish there. And we're going to go back to our playing males. One of the questions that we do tend to get asked is when bears like this play with one another, or if subadult bears like 503 and 719 are observed sharing fish or appearing to share fish, will they end up denning together? And the answer is essentially no. Bears will den by themselves unless it's a mother bear who will den with her cubs. First summer that they were on their own, after that first summer, they ended up denning together. But it would seem to be a rare case, if ever documented. When bears like these brown bears are ready to go into hibernation, maybe about a month and a half or 2 months from now, they'll start to head up the mountains that are perhaps around the Brooks River. There was a collaring study that was done in the 1970s, which indicated that bears who use the Brooks River went to the mountains that are close by, including Dumpling Mountain. Ooh, sounds! that we heard from those two adult male bears as they fought with one another. That was a real fight, not a play fight, like what we were witnessing with bear 151 and bear 503. It looked like it was bear 474 and 32 that were involved in that one. And as we saw, apparently bear number 480 saw it was worth it to actually stand up and leave his fishing spot and go investigate or perhaps get ready to participate. In that window of opportunity, this other adult male bear, possibly bear number 68, has taken that spot from 480 Otis. So even when bears are subjected to injuries, like perhaps an injury that they might sustain from a dominance interaction, they have a pretty remarkable capacity to recover from injuries like that. There are some bears that we'll see along the river here that show up with open wounds or really severe limps. There was an adult male that we saw earlier this year who was placing no weight on his back right leg. Bears are capable of recovering from such injuries. They're remarkably resilient creatures. So even with something like that, if they can make it through and still get enough food to survive the winter, they might return again the next spring healed, or at least healed enough that they can give it another go as they try to make it one more year. It was 474 who was doing the biting, and bear 32 Chunk who was bitten on his shoulder, maybe. And there are occasionally times where when bears engage in these dominance interaction, it can be difficult to tell exactly who is the winner and who is the loser, I suppose. Occasionally, it is the bear who walks away first that has asserted himself as the more dominant bear. Perhaps it's a display showing that he feels comfortable enough or secure enough in his dominance to turn his back on that other bear or to walk away. And the dominance hierarchy can be an ever-shifting beast out here along the Brooks River. This summer, we saw a bit of a shakeup. For the past few years, bear number 856 has been recognized as the most dominant bear on the river. He would yield space to no one. This summer, however, it seems that 32 has been establishing himself as perhaps the bear that is pushing others around more. We've seen this interesting case here where 747 came in and occupied the jacuzzi. 32 is now where we see him kind of halfway across the river. So it's possible that things will continue to change. Several years ago, bear 480 Otis was probably the most dominant bear on the river. He's aged a bit now. He's in his early 20s, missing a couple of canine teeth, but still, as you can see from his size, perfectly capable of eating enough salmon to survive. Well, that seems like perhaps an exciting conclusion for our play-by-play today. I do hope that the experience with the magical parabolic microphone is one that has worked out. Usually we can only hear the sound of the waterfall and maybe some gulls, but occasionally we have the chance to get a little bit closer, in a way, as safely as possible with devices like that microphone. We want to thank you for tuning in to this program this afternoon. Sorry about the late start. If you have any lingering questions, feel free to post them. We'll make an effort to address questions that you might have about what you've seen this afternoon or other things that capture your interest as you watch the drama of the brown bears unfold here along the Brooks River in Katmai National Park. Thanks again, folks. Take care. We'll see you again soon.